Welcome to episode 187 of the Sisters in Loss podcast. Have you experienced a miscarriage after your rainbow baby? Today's guest experienced a miscarriage in 2015, gave birth to her son in 2016, and he passed away 11 days after his birth due to lack of oxygen and severe brain damage. Siedah Fagan went on to survive pregnancy loss by trying to conceive her rainbow baby and gave birth in 2017, only to be faced with another untimely loss by a miscarriage in 2019. In this episode and Surviving Pregnancy Loss series, Siedah shares her journey of surviving loss and losing an infant and the courage to try again and have her rainbow baby and experience another loss after her rainbow baby. This episode is for you to listen to if you've experienced a miscarriage after your rainbow baby. This episode is for you to listen to on how to survive miscarriage and infant loss. Listen to this episode here.
Welcome to the Surviving Pregnancy Loss series. I'm your host, Erica McAfee, and I am excited to introduce today's guest. So please share with the viewers a little bit about yourself and what you do.
All right, perfect. So my name's Siedah Fagan. I go by Sai. So Erica, feel free to call me Sai throughout the interview today. So I am a social worker. I actually met Erica in person last November at the Continuum conference. And I'm really, really excited to talk with you all today about my story and a little bit of my experiences with everybody.
Yes, awesome. So take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your loss story.
All right, perfect. So I got pregnant for the first time in 2015. First pregnancy, me and my boyfriend at the time, we're married now, so I had to think back. And I was around 13 weeks. We were really excited. We'd share with all of our friends and our family that we were expecting. We were at a gathering on maybe a Saturday. And that Monday I had my ultrasound. And at the ultrasound, there wasn't a heartbeat. So they told us the options to, miscarry at home or to have the D&E surgery. Just for me and my anxiety, I decided to go with the D&E surgery. So I did that a couple of days later. And that was really devastating and was really hard. After the doctors were kind of you're very young. It's very normal. You guys can try again right after your next cycle. So okay. So a couple months passed. We ended up getting pregnant again, and I was due in August of 2016. So I had a full-term pregnancy. Everything was healthy, normal, perfect. Everything was going really well. I was 40 weeks in a couple of days, which they say, the first time, sometimes you go a little bit longer. So I was 2 or 3 days over my due date. My husband had left for work in the morning. When he kissed me, I kind of turned around to fall back asleep. And in that moment, I felt that my water broke in the bed. So I was okay, go to the bathroom. I come back and I went to go rid of the fluid that got on the bed, and it had a tint to it. So I had a midwife. I called the midwife. They were saying I didn't have any contractions at that point. So they weren't in a rush. They said, relax, have a shower, breakfast, call your husband back from work, and then come in. So we probably got to the hospital around 11. They checked me in. They checked me. I wasn't really dilated at that point. So just like you see in the movies, they had us walking around the hospital, doing those laps. I'm really trying to get my labor started. So we did that, checked back in with them. Nothing really had started at that point. And we're calling everybody the baby's coming, everyone came to the hospital, but really there wasn't anything for anybody to do because I wasn't far enough for anything to progress. So fast forward to maybe 9 o'clock that night, that's when my contractions really started coming. And for me, I was I want to do this all natural. I'm going to be able to handle it. I didn't want any medication at first. So I was just going through the contractions, going through them on the ball, on the bed, my husband rubbing my back, music, the whole nine. We were just going through the motions. And maybe by 1 or 2, I was just so exhausted that I asked for the epidural just so that I could rest for a little bit. So they gave me the epidural, gave me the catheter. I rested for a little bit. Then they came in to check me and they noticed that my catheter wasn't draining as much as it should have been. So I was sleeping on my side. I flipped over to my back for them to adjust the catheter. And when I did that, the baby had a decel in the heart rate. So all the doctors came in and they were like, you're fully dilated at this point. Try to push. We don't know how you're going to take it. We don't know how the baby's going to take it. What do you guys want to do? At that point, my husband was just like, for the sake of you and for the baby, we didn't know the gender. We want it to be a surprise. So he was like, let's just do the C-sections. He gets ready for the C-section. We go in the room. We ended up having a baby boy. We named him Kajari. I dozed off. They rolled me into like the recovery. At that point, I'm like calling my mom and calling on my friends, like the baby's here. It's a boy. Like everybody's so excited. Then I remember dozing off again. And then I remember my husband coming to me saying he's doing great. He's having a little bit of difficulty breathing on his own. So they put one of those oxygen masks by him just to help blow some oxygen by his face. So then I remember dozing off and then the nurse coming up and asking if I wanted to go down to the NICU to see him. And I was like, yeah, okay. So at that point, my husband told me, you know, there was some issues with his temperature. And then the breathing also continued to be an issue. So that's why they brought him down to the NICU. Once I got down there, the doctors like pulled me and my husband aside. He's still having issues with his breathing. We have to do some cooling. We have to do a lumbar test. We have to run all these scans. We have to see what's really going on with him. So long story short, he ended up needing to be, I said this word wrong earlier, and I just want to make sure I'm saying it right, incubated to help with his breathing. So he needed that. He needed cooling. They did brain scans, CT scans. They did everything. And what they found was that they determined like 7 to 10 days before he was born, when he was still in utero, he had a lapse of oxygen at some point, and had severe brain damage. So they said that if he were to have survived, his life would have been similar to that of a child with cerebral palsy. And then after life, he ended up passing away because he could not breathe on his own. And it was just so devastating and earth-shattering to me and my husband. And like in the moment, I was like, well, did I make something wrong? Like, was I not paying attention? Is there something that I could have done wrong? And then you think, well, did the doctors do everything that they should have been doing? And it was a really, really hard time. So even just like, luckily, our friends and our family were with us 24/7, bringing us food and just really there to support us. And, you know, when it was time to leave the hospital, even that was hard. And luckily, our best friend drove us home and he was cognizant enough to like take the car seat out. But like going home, we still had to walk by the room that we had set up for him. And it was just a lot. So even after losing him, it was just like, oh, well, we have to plan a funeral. And I don't know how to plan. What do we do about that? How are we going to even do this? So thankfully, my mother-in-law and our church, she really helped us with that. And it was just really, really, really difficult time for me and my husband. And I think for us, you know, like I said, I'm a social worker. So I'm very talky, feely, mushy, and my husband is not that at all. For him, his way to cope was, you know, he was very into like fitness. So he would just like go to the gym and that's how he would kind of get it out. For me, like I was just laying in bed and crying and not sleeping. And we ended up, when you lose a baby in the NICU, they give you like a box. So they gave us one of those boxes. It had some resources in there. I read one of the books that was in there, one of the books was okay. It's called Tear Soup. I read it one time. There was also like a list of some resources in there, and there was this support group that was in there. So we called to get connected to that group, and we were actually in there with 2 other couples. One of them, they had a stillbirth, and the other couple, the birthing situation was a little similar to ours, but unlike our situation, their baby was in duress, like for a lot of the labor. And it was nice to, you know, share stories and really know that you're not alone, because I feel like for me, having to deal with this, like nobody ever talks about this terrible thing that happens to us, right? And then once you start opening up about it and talking with people about it, they're like, oh, that happened to my auntie. Oh, that happened to my cousin. But it's like one of those things that nobody wants to talk about because it is so sad. So we did that group, that couples group. And then I called for further support. My husband and I did a couple of couple sessions. And to this day, I tell everyone, like, I could not have gone through that without the love and support of my husband. Like, he really pushed me to, get back on my feet. And, we were able to get pregnant 2 times. So he reminded me of that and that he was always going to be there to support me. He is amazing. And he really, really was so supportive throughout that whole time. And it's so crazy to think about. When I called to make the referral for further services, one of the questions was, how is this affecting your marriage? And I kind of chuckled at the intake person. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And after like further conversation and like talking with people about it, people were like, well, some people like blame each other. And sometimes something so terrible like this can break up a marriage. And I was like, honestly, the opposite was for us. Like, it made us stronger. And not that it brought us more together, but it kind of did. We've been together for a really long time, since college. But, it was just something, it was so different from the miscarriage too, because obviously the miscarriage hurt, right? But to carry a baby for 9 months, to meet him, to name him, to hold him when he first comes out, and then to hold him while he's taking his last breath, it was just a whole different experience. And for me to kind of like cope through that. So in the NICU, they did a really good job, and they made us like little necklaces with footprints on it. So I wore that for like weeks on weeks on weeks until it started to rust. Like, I have it right here next to me for good luck to get me through this interview. And you can barely see the footprints at this point. I did some things that weren't healthy as well. Like, I would look at his pictures every night and like cry myself to sleep. I would sleep with his blanket or like sleep with his t-shirt, just for me, just comforting. And then I think as a woman too, like, I felt bad and felt like I let my husband down and things like that. But he always reassured me, like, it wasn't my fault. There was nothing that I did. Like I said, I'm really, really thankful for him. And then, after we lost Kajari in August, we actually got married that May while I was pregnant, just at the courthouse, just with our parents. And we were planning like a big destination wedding with all of our friends and family a year later on our 1-year anniversary. So as I'm planning the whole wedding, and in my talks, we ended up doing a cruise. So am I talking with them about my son that's coming? And so I had to like go back and like have that conversation, and just like returning to work because I didn't need my maternity leave anymore because I didn't have a baby. So just having that conversation with work, and when was it good for me to go back to work? When should I go back to work? So I ended up going back to work in October. So I took like a little bit over a month and a half, and just obviously work, like, sent out an email to everybody, and just the anxiety about like having to tell people over and over again. And you know how it is when you get a mass email from work. Like, some people didn't read it and came up to me and were like, how's the baby? And I'm just like, he's not here. They sent you an email. You didn't see the email. So that was triggering and hurtful, but people are human. So, and it was just weird because like the dynamic of people, I feel like sometimes people don't know how to ask if you're okay or approach you. And people that I've never spoken to before at work were coming up to me, and it was just an awkward and weird dynamic. And for me to kind of not sit at home crying and like thinking about it all the time. I was in grad school when I got pregnant for my master's in social work. So my plan was to take a year off because I was going to have this brand new baby. I was going to be working, do everything at the same time. So I was able to contact my school, back to school, like right when I got back to work. And that was helpful to kind of help push through and kind of get through. And then I feel like friends and family also, they want to be as helpful as possible, right? So I remember one time our friends came over, they're like, no, you guys are getting out of the house. We're going out to eat. So we're getting ready. And there was like a Pampers commercial like on TV. And I remember my best friend like told me afterwards, she's like, I wanted to change the TV so bad. Like I didn't know what to do. And everyone just wants to be so sensitive and so helpful. And, you know, they say that time heals all wounds. And I think with something like this, time doesn't make it get better. It definitely helps the coping to be a little bit easier, but it definitely still hurts the same, right? So this August, he would have been 4. So we go to his gravesite, and even that, like, we didn't pick out his headstone, didn't do any of that until months and months and months later, because it was just too hard to have to go there, pick what we want to put on it. It was just too much. And even at the funeral, like, we didn't know that when we went to the burial, it could have just been me and my husband. So everybody who was at the funeral went to the burial too. And me and my husband were up there and just like crying and holding each other. Like, we wished it was just us two, like, looking back on it. So it was just a really, really hard experience. And I think my work also, losing my son made my work harder. Like I said, I'm a social worker, and, you know, sometimes in my line of work, I see children that have been abused and neglected, you know, and it just hurt that some people feel that these little innocent people are just so disposable. And obviously they don't know what I've gone through. It's been a long road. I ended up getting pregnant again, and we had our rainbow baby, which I didn't even know was a thing until I went into my wax when I was about to give birth. And she's like, "Oh, so this is your rainbow baby." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I never heard that term before in my life. So we had Mr. Cannon, who is 2 going on 6, and he is just a joy. And it's just so crazy that, so when he was born, so before we got pregnant, we went and we did a consultation with the high-risk doctors, because when we did all the genetic testing, all the testing that me and my husband did to kind of show some rhyme or reason to what happened with Kajari, there was nothing wrong with my placenta. Everything was fine. So the doctors kind of were like, it was just kind of one of those 1 in a million things that just happened. So we went and we met with high risk, and, you know, the doctors and the specialists were like, you're not considered high risk. Like, everything was fine, but if you want to be followed, we would love to have you guys. So we ended up being followed by the high risk department. And the beginning was the same. Just toward the end, I did more stress tests and more ultrasounds because of that time frame that they gave us, like the 2-week mark of when they suspect Kajari didn't have oxygen when he was in utero. So the plan, just for me and for my anxiety, was to be induced. So that's what we did. Again, I wanted to try to do the vaginal birth after a C-section. My body was not having it. And Cannon came out. Again, we didn't know what we were having. We ended up having a baby boy. And he came out and he was fine, but he had some issues with his temperature and his blood sugars. So same scenario. I had him. He went down to the NICU and then they brought me down to the NICU, and then the doctors are coming in, like, kind of having this similar conversation with us again. And that, me and my husband obviously weren't talking. We were listening to the doctor. Both had the same feeling, like, this is too much. We're not having any more kids after this, because it was just so triggering, like, to be back down there and to have the doctor say, like, we don't know why your baby's not managing his sugar. Like, we need to run all this tests. And I'm sure it was the same hospital. And I'm sure for us and for them, they wanted to just make sure that they did everything they needed to do, just knowing our history and what we went through a couple of years before. So luckily, Cannon was fine. He just needed some glucose and to be weaned off of it, and he was fine. But the irony of the whole situation is he was in the NICU for exactly 11 days as well. And then we brought him home. It was crazy, and it was so triggering, but the hospital was so amazing. They, like, put us at a different section, so we weren't next to the room that we were with Kajari. And we ended up making a friend from one of the nurses who was primarily assigned to Kajari, and she had babies that she was already taking care of, so she didn't get to take care of Cannon, but she always came in and checked on us, and, like, some of the other nurses that knew us. So it was a very nice feeling. And then I ended up getting pregnant again last August, September, and I had another miscarriage. So technically I've been pregnant 4 times, 2 miscarriages, the loss of Kajari, and my baby boy Cannon. So that's kind of been my journey. Whew.
Oh, yes. Thank you for sharing that. I think that we all can relate to you about just how you felt after Kajari, and just even through your miscarriages that you've had, the perseverance and the resilience to continue to go on and on in your journey to motherhood and becoming a mother again after loss. So I would love for you to share just how are you surviving pregnancy loss?
So for me, I think that as a social worker, I think long term, I want to do more work in this realm as a woman of color, and just knowing what happens to women who go into the doctors to have their babies and the disparities. It's just, I feel like I need to do something. So once I get my appropriate licensure, my goal is open a private practice and do individual therapy and group therapy for moms who have experienced pregnancy loss. And I want to write a book about my story and kind of what I shared today. But I think for me, just staying connected, involved, and informed about everything that's going on in the world, especially for women of color. So I did attend the Continuum conference, which I was like, really hesitant about. I didn't know where I was going to fit in, because I felt like, is this only for doulas? Like, what am I going to do? But I'm so happy that I went, and I'm so happy that I was able to meet you, Erica, and you gave me some connections for the area where I live. I'm a part of your group on Facebook. I'm a part of another group on Facebook. And for me, I'm kind of a silent member, and I see what's going on. I don't really post a lot, and I think that's just me knowing that I have that support there if I need it. And just like I said before, just knowing you're not alone. And like, there's so many women who have gone through similar situations, and just to reach out and just to give somebody a hand, hold through this, or just ears to listen to in this crazy crisis that we're living in right now. I think it's, for me, I'm lucky to have a partner, really good friends and family that I can lean on for the support, and who are able to check on me. And just, I try to take care of myself. I'm not the best at self-care, but trying to do my nails or like do my hair, things that are meaningful to me, whether it be watching a show or spending time with my husband and my son. And yeah, just trying to stay positive. I think that's the thing too. Like, even with all the losses, it kind of makes you think like, well, why me? Like, what did I do to kind of deserve this? And it's hard, but I try to not dwell on the past. And obviously I'm human. I have bad days. I have days that are not good, days that I just cry and think and wish and hope. But it's hard, especially for me. I feel like it was hard for us to think of ways to kind of honor Kajari. So we tried doing the scrapbook that I think one of the therapists told us to do. That did not work. It wasn't a good idea for us. I don't know if we tried to do it too soon. I don't know if it was too much, but that didn't work for us. We did a maternity shoot while I was pregnant, and we're big football fans. And so we got a Patriots jersey with the number 1, because he was our first baby, and our last name Fagan. So we had that jersey. For Cannon's first birthday, he actually wore the jersey for his birthday party. So that was really nice. And we actually, this year, we hung up the jersey with a picture in Cannon's room, and we're starting to talk with Cannon about his brother. And those conversations go really well, and very, very smart and intelligent. And, and I got connected, a doula here in the Boston area, and she was telling me about how she has a rainbow baby, and how rainbow babies, there's just something about them that's just so different. And I fully believe that, because sometimes Cannon just starts saying stuff, and we're like, Cannon, have you been here before? Like, what are you saying? Like, it's just so mind-blowing. Like, one day, my husband and him were playing, and my husband was like, oh, Cannon, who's my best friend? Thinking he's going to say me. And he was like, Kajari is your best friend. And my husband was just so taken aback. It's like, how, Cannon, how? To say, I know that my brother's Kajari, and one of my best friends, while we were in the NICU, we had 3 books and we would read to him. So my first Mother's Day, she got me those 3 books. So Cannon has those books in his room, and he's like, oh, Mama, I want to read Kajari's book. So I think, parenting Cannon has definitely helped with my coping and my healing. and just trying to take care of myself as best as I can. I try to eat good. Sometimes it doesn't go too well. But yeah, I just try to take care of myself.
I love it. I love it. So where can our viewers connect with you after this episode?
So I'm not a huge social media person. I do have a Facebook. So my name on Facebook is Siedah Fagan. That's SIE. Fagan is F as in Frank A, G as in George A-N. And that's really the only social media I have. And also, like I said, this August on the 5th was Kajari's 4th birthday. And my husband's way to honor him was he wrote a children's book. All the characters are people of color. The boy in the book is named after Kajari and resembles Canon. So it's kind of a mixture of both of our boys. You can find it at dreamonscj.com. It's a really, really, really wonderful book. And I think that kind of helped him in his way kind of cope. And I think that especially releasing it on his 4th birthday this year, I think that was really, really special for both of us. Yeah.
So I'll make sure I link all of her social and a link to the book on Amazon so you all can go get it. Definitely share it with your rainbows, as I do have it for mine and I need to sit and read it to him. So thank you. And thank you again, Sai, for sharing your story and your light. And we appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica, so much for all that you do and for creating this platform to be together and stay connected and share our stories and have a helping hand for each other and really get each other through all of these difficult times. And I think for me, one of the things that I'm trying to get into more is reading kind of like motivational books. So one of the books that I have, there's a quote from it that I read if I'm really, really down and out. Is it okay if I read it?
Sure.
All right, perfect. And I'm actually reading, I just started last week, Own Your Glow by Latham.
Oh, yay.
Yes. Yes. Shout out to Latham. I saved it in my phone. That way I could have easy access to it whenever I need it. Know that you are valuable, that you are worthy. Know that you are rare. How could anyone be better than you if you are the only you? So that's kind of my mantra and what I use if I'm ever feeling, down and really need to pick me up. So again, Erica, thank you so much. To all the women out there, just stay strong, stay you, stay positive, try to do something for yourself. And I think, in these tough situations, think like this will pass for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. There are so many ways to connect with the Sisters in Loss community. Join our monthly support group, our Sisters in Loss Healing Collective at sistersinlosshealing.com. Join our free Facebook group at sistersinloss.com/community or text sisters to 797979 to download your free Journal to Healing ebook. That is sisters to 797979 to download your free Journal to Healing ebook. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Sisters in Loss and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, girl, we on YouTube at Sisters in Loss TV. We love you for listening. Keep the faith. Until next time, this is Erica, and I'll talk to you soon.